and Madan Sabnavis now join me to speak more on the impact of price increases. Welcome to both of you. Madan, during our conversation in the festive season, we were talking about this. This was predicted, this was expected, because a lot of manufacturers were also holding off on passing on increased prices during the festive season. They didn't want to perhaps dampen the mood or the demand coming in. And now we're beginning to see that HUL, ITC are some of the majors. Of course, Parle has also increased prices. Do you see this as just the first tranche of price increases?
I think it will be done in a phased way across different industries, because we must understand that raw material prices have gone up in the last 1 year or so. I think this is based on what happens both at a global level as well as what's happening internally. And these price costs are being carried forward in terms of the final price. And I think the problem which we have here is that when we're talking of manufactured products, is that we run into the MRP syndrome. The MRP syndrome is something which I would say is that once the price goes up, really doesn't come down. For agricultural products, what we're talking of, something like tomatoes, okay, it's 100 rupees today, but tomorrow it could come back to 20 rupees or 30 rupees a kilo. Whereas when my toothpaste or my shaving cream becomes more expensive, the MRP goes up. Very rarely do we see the prices really coming down, even in case there's cooling of the raw material prices. So I think that's why we should brace ourselves for higher inflation, more generalized inflation, not just on the food side, but also on the non-food side.
Mayank, I know Parle has already taken some price hikes. Is just the first of many? And have you passed on pretty much all of the increase in your costs, or are you waiting to do that in tranches?
No, so as Madan rightly put it across, it would be difficult for any manufacturer to pass on the full increase in price at one go. Also, if you look at the kind of inflation in cost or in input cost, it has been really, huge. So if we talk about edible oil kind of thing, compared to last year, similar period last year, we are talking about a 55 to 60% increase. In wheat prices, it's about 8 to 10%. Sugar prices are 8 to 10%. So, key raw material prices have gone up, and some of them have gone up significantly. Crude, as you know, has gone up significantly. Now, given that, it would be difficult to pass that entire price hike to the consumer at one go. That creates, immediate dip in demand, and it dampens the demand which was, really going up or which was reviving. And as a result of that, I think, most companies would take the price hike in a staggered way, in a phased manner. So we've taken a 5 to 10% price hike, which would be, probably, so in a way, this is second during this particular calendar year, first during the financial year. But we'll, evaluate how it's received by consumers, one, and secondly, how the raw material prices are moving as well. So edible oil had gone up all the way till almost 135, 140 rupees, and it has come back to about 120, 125. So if it further goes down, maybe, the number of price hikes that we may look at, if it's 3 or 4, it may go down to 2. And if it continues ruling at the current level, or if it continues increasing the way it has over a period of last 1 year, then we may look at more. So two things would play an important role. One, how the price hikes are received in the market, and secondly, how the input cost is behaving. So going forward, this would be two things which would be determining how we would be taking up the price hikes and at what interval we would be doing that.
So, Mayank, so far, have you had any initial feedback on how these price hikes are being received?
Yeah, so the first price hike, the first set of price hike that we took long back, I think about 6 to 8 months back in the beginning of the year, has been received well. And I'm sure, even this one would not have a problem, because consumers are also rational that way. They see prices of other things going up. And it's always about the relative price. It's never about the absolute price. So, if I am taking up the price, they're seeing prices of raw material which go into my product also going up, and they, are rational enough to understand that obviously my price would go up. And as I shared earlier as well, it's not 100% price hike or 100% increase in my cost that I'm passing at one go. I'm doing it in a phased manner, which makes it far more palatable for consumers in terms of being agreeable and not being deterred by that increase in price by the manufacturer.
Madan, do you expect in across categories consumers to be that forgiving? Well, in FMCG kind of categories, possibly the price hikes in absolute terms won't pinch much. Consumers may move to smaller packaging and will not have too much of a choice unless they want to absolutely switch brands. But in categories like apparels, for example, or electronics or consumer durables, do you think this will lead to a postponing of purchase decisions?
I think we are in this particular phase where there is a lot of pent-up demand which is being satiated, or which was started being satiated from the festival season time onwards. And therefore, people are in the mood of spending. So I think the prices which are going up today may not be a deterrent immediately. And as an economist, I think that the impact on savings is going to be more discernible, because people are going to continue consuming the FMCG goods, maybe even your consumer electronic goods where the prices have gone up. We are already into the habit of using our mobile phones. So even if the cost has gone up, I'll continue making those calls. And therefore, I have a feeling that what is really going to suffer is going to be savings. And we are in this particular critical phase where we have been talking about consumption reviving, consumption being boosted. So I think that's not going to take a backseat right now. And as Mayank was saying, I think most companies are not increasing their prices in a full manner. It's being done partially. And I think at least for the food products, one can say that there's a possibility that, say, edible oil prices or sugar prices come down. It's possible for you to make sure that you won't be making that kind of a loss what you're making right now. But when you're going into the chemicals, like when I go back to chemicals, I'm saying my toothpaste, shaving cream, and the other kind of cosmetics which are there, I think those prices are ones which are definitely not going to come down, which means that on the non-food category, I would expect the prices to increase further. Now, it's a case of saying that if I have limited income, my income has not gone up, I may have to draw certain trade-offs whether I use more of services or more of these FMCG goods. But I think that will be we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. But I think definitely there will be an impact on savings, because people are in the mood of spending. Today, even if you increase the price of your cinema theater tickets, I'm still going to go for it, because there is this unsatiated demand which was not possible for all this while. So I think people are in the mood of consuming. So I don't think consumption is going to take a hit, but definitely inflation will take a hit. So I think today we have to distinguish between demand and prices. So inflation, food as well as non-food inflation, is something which is going to continue moving upwards. But demand on the whole, I don't think is going to get restricted right now. Maybe if it's sustained over a longer period of time, then we could see maybe a decision being taken. But right now, I think it's going to be more a case of saying, let me cut down on my savings. Let me try and fulfill my consumption demand, which has not been satiated for so long.
All right, so that pent-up demand will still continue to drive purchases. But Madan, we've spoken about this before. Very often, the experiential inflation does not necessarily reflect in the headline numbers of the kinds of things that are getting more expensive right now. And let me add things like, travel tickets, airfares, etc. Do you think that we will eventually see this being reflected in the headline numbers, or a low base will make sure that at least for some time now our inflation numbers look okay?
See, the thing is that if we are used to having a number in the region of around 5.5%, which I think is what inflation is right now, I think moving up by another 0.5% or 1% may not look that scary. But if you're looking at inflation moving below 4%, I think there is still some view in the corporate sector that there is scope for reducing interest rates, provided inflation comes down, and that inflation could come down. I think that kind of a scenario can be ruled out for the time being. At least I would say for the next 6 months, that is going right up to March, or maybe even the policy beyond March. We cannot really expect the RBI to consider lowering the rates. This whole case of saying that should we be increasing rates because of the inflation number going up. But to my mind, it will remain in the region of 5.5% on an average basis. Maybe it could touch 6% at certain points of time. But I'm still hopeful that in terms of food prices, there could be some kind of a rollback of prices, in which case maybe there could be some relief on that side. And we still have around 48 to 50% of the weightage in our consumer price index coming from pure food products.
Absolutely. Now, Mayank, for how long do you continue to see this high cost input scenario playing out and the supply crunch playing out, which will, feed into price hikes over the next few months? Do you think that this is a phenomenon which ends in the next 3 to 6 months or can follow through in the next calendar year as well?
So some of the input, raw material are difficult to predict, and they have, global implications. So, for example, if we are talking about edible oil, global events have huge implication and would be difficult for anybody to predict how it could move. If we talk about sugar and if we talk about wheat, those are two, agri inputs or agriculture products within India, which are largely sourced from India, where while one may think that we have, good crop coming in, we have abundance of both of them, but if you look at the stated objective of government, where they are looking at doubling farmers' income by 2022, we may not see, prices going down significantly from the current levels. If at all, they may only move up. And with commodities like sugar, again, where, you have some kind of implication coming in from global events. For example, the issue with the Brazil crop this year and government's policy of, allowing exports or stuff like that may have implication on the sugar prices, domestic sugar prices. So it would be difficult to predict that way. But what we feel is that, barring while the other two will go up, they've not really seen that kind of increase in last 1.5, 2 years. There has been just 8 to 10% increase that may. So it would be difficult for us to, predict and having, said that sugar and wheat have not really seen that kind of increase, we expect that, we may not really see total input cost going down in the coming year. So you may see, more price increases coming in from manufacturers. That's one. Secondly, there are two other things that I would like to share. I mean, probably corroborating what just Madan said and probably taking it a little forward, that the demand is buoyant. I think, there are two reasons behind it. One is consumers, really want to go out and spend. There is some sort of revenge buying. It's not just pent-up demand. We're seeing actually revenge buying. People are going out and spending. There's been this feeling that, enough is enough. There's been almost, people have contained themselves in their houses for last 1.5 years. So we are seeing, spending happening, that sort of revenge buying happening, and people going out and spending, not just on products, even on services, leisure, travel, everything. That will continue, keeping demand robust. And secondly, as I said, consumers may not feel, especially in FMCG products, may not feel so much of, pinch of the increased prices, because if you look at the price points, 5 rupee, 10 rupee, 20 rupee, it's not the price hike that happens. It's effectively reduction in the weight of the product, indirect price hike, to which I think consumers would be far more conducive or amenable going forward. So given those things, we would continue seeing, demand being robust at least for next 1.5 years. That's our feel.
All right, so the price hikes will continue, but the bet is that the demand also will be robust enough to absorb these price hikes. Anyway, be ready to budget to pay more for ordinary everyday things, as well as those input costs finally start getting passed on. Thank you so much, Mayank and Madan, for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you.